today's interview, we're going to be talking to Arthur West, who is the founder of No Code Devs and a bunch of other online businesses. Before we jump into automations, actually, I'm just going to ask you a question. Which one do you think are your favorite AI or automation softwares?
Really, for the past few years, I've leaned heavily on Zapier, which should be familiar to most people who are in the space for most of my automations. And that includes AI automations because, of course, you can integrate a lot of AI tools into Zapier. I also do use Make, formerly Integromat, for some operations that maybe I can't do in Zapier. It scales a little bit better sometimes than Zapier does because Zapier can get expensive at scale. But basically Make and Zapier for the lion's share of my automation operations right now.
Very cool. So let's dive into the first workflow you have to share with us.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and talk about my first automation here. We are in Zapier right now. Essentially what we're doing is adding video content from YouTube to our CMS on Wix Studio. So anytime we find a video that's interesting, we add it to a specific YouTube playlist. And then what happens is it goes through this workflow. It adds it to our Airtable database, and then it sends it through a webhook to our CMS. So just by adding one video on a playlist on YouTube, which is just a one-click operation, this sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events happens, and it ends up in our Airtable and also on our CMS on our website. The first step here that triggers the automation is when a new video is in a playlist. What step 2 does here is it actually looks at the Airtable to see if there's already a video with that URL in our database. If it finds it, then it stops the automation. But if it doesn't find it, then it creates a new video. This prevents duplicate videos from being added to our database. Then it finds and matches the video to the author of the YouTube video. So if there's an author that's already in our database, it'll match it. If not, it'll go ahead and create that creator in our database. So it's really setting up all this work for us. Next up, it's taking the description, which can be quite lengthy, on YouTube, and it's shortening it for SEO purposes and for our website. Then it's adding that description to the database, the SEO to the database. And in this post and webhooks is basically doing a post request to Wix's CMS. So all this data gets sent to Wix. And then finally, we update our Airtable record with the live item ID of the record in our CMS. So, this saves us a lot of time. Prior to using this automation, every time we wanted to add a video to our site, it was a lot of manual work, a lot of copy and pasting, and it just took a lot of time and it was frustrating. So this automation really saves a lot of time. We add dozens of videos to our website every single day. So being able to do it with one click is just a huge time saver. It's an automation that we use all the time.
Otherwise, it's probably a one-person job to be able to do this manually, like going through the videos and adding it all together. I mean, for your case, for No Code Devs, having videos is one specific use case. But for example, for somebody who just wants to have a lot of content for SEO, they can use these videos and have an AI workflow in between to write like blogs and add those YouTube videos onto their website by crediting the author, leveraging, like giving all credits as possible, like, just to be compliant and to be respectful, and to use that to leverage and grow their own websites just through SEO using similar workflow.
Absolutely. And this automation is actually a little bit older. AI wasn't as prevalent when we set it up. This is probably an automation that's 2 years old. But one thing that we could definitely do is, perhaps rewrite the description with AI with a specific prompt, something like that. So I think you gave me a couple ideas here. You could use this trigger for a new video in a playlist and then sort of like funnel that information anywhere. It could be a newsletter, it could be a blog.
And how did you come up with this flow? I mean, you are an automation expert for sure, but how do you go about thinking these steps? Because it does require, filtering process. It has multiple steps with Airtable and a webhook step as well.
Yeah, I think for any of these automations that we're going to talk about today, it's just, I sort of keep a mental note of things that I am doing over and over again, or somebody on the team is doing over and over again. And if we find that we're doing these repetitive actions, 99% of the time, there's a way to automate it. Hey, look, I mean, these are trial and error. Some of these steps may not have existed in the first version.
Right.
Get it to work, get it from 0 to 1. And then once you have that syncing, you're like, oh, I can make it a little bit better by, shortening the text for SEO, or I can make it a little bit better, by adding AI to, make a more interesting caption. So I think, just starting small, and then you can slowly add more to your automation as you work through it.
Makes sense. So build incrementally, not trying to build a big automation all at once, just start step by step, little by little. And as you're seeing that workflow being useful, keep adding steps. No, it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Zapier, if there's errors happening in your workflow too, it's sometimes hard to identify. So I think it's really good just to keep it simple at first, make sure that works really well. And then great, it does, you can add additional steps. jobs.
Makes sense. What else saves you a lot of time?
This one is just a tiny little automation, but sometimes it's the little things that go a long way. This is just as simple as when there's a new payment in Stripe, we want to send a notification to a Slack channel. Seems very simple, except that what I have here is a filter that only looks for certain types of transactions in Stripe. So what we're doing here is we're tracking sales from one particular digital product, and we don't want notifications for every Stripe payment. So this one just, watches for the payment in Stripe, filters out everything except one product. And then if that product hits, it's going to send a direct message in Slack. So we can kind of very closely track the performance of this lead magnet. And if, our notifications in Slack start to dwindle down a little bit, then we might think, oh, well, maybe it's time to update this lead magnet or change it. It goes a long way in saving time. You don't have to log into Stripe, check your account. It gives you an instant notification in Slack. So super simple, but very effective.
This is like your digital gong in a sales team where every time there's a new sales guy, it's like bing.
Yeah, except that the filter here is to reduce the bing. So we only get bings for the things that we're really tracking one at a time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're like, oh, bing, 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 and you get distracted, where we really want to be laser focused on the performance of this lead magnet. We love little automations like this. I've got dozens of ones like this, but I think just to show that it doesn't always need to be super complex. It could just be something really simple that saves you a lot of time.
Nice.
This next one, we're going to stay in Zapier here. I have 3 in Zapier to show, and I have 2 other ones. This one is for a product that is a web-based product. It's sort of like a software directory of different SaaS tools. And what's happening in here is we have an Airtable base where we just have a list of domains. So it could be like airtable.com, webflow.com, anyAItool.com or .ai. And what's happening is this automation looks for a new record in that Airtable. Once any new record is added or any website is added to the row, what happens here is actually firing off an API call to Semrush, where it gets all of the API data. It basically gets back an object from Semrush that has all of the traffic analytics data for that domain. So send out Zapier.com in Airtable. It makes an API call to Semrush. We get back all the traffic analytics from that domain, like how many visitors were in the last 3 months, what the domain rating score is, what are the competitors. There's like 50 items of data that come back from this API call. So we're actually making an API call in Zapier, which is pretty cool. We're getting that data. And then what we're doing is we're taking that object data and we're mapping it back to Airtable so that the Airtable field instantaneously gets filled out with like 50 items for that object. So it's really simple. Just enter one domain and you get all these data points about that domain in a matter of seconds. We can even get a list of SaaS domains, like in the hundreds or thousands at a time, paste them all in Airtable, and this automation will run and pull in tens of thousands of data points for all of these domains all at once. So really, really simple automation, but super cool, super powerful when you get into making API calls in Zapier.
I guess I could see this being used for competitive analysis report as well. Let's say you have you're tracking competitors and you have those data points you want to track. Now you have an Airtable dashboard or a Notion dashboard for that matter that has all the data points you're tracking. Just simple workflow. I can think of so many other applications, other could even be I don't know if it's going to be with Semrush, but you can track somebody's blogs, perhaps all the topics they're using, and you just do keyword mapping.
Yep.
Tools like Semrush do that already for you.
Yeah. One of the reasons I was building a product here, but in terms of internal research, you could have Semrush working for you and just sort of go to individual pages on Semrush. I think you can even compare sites there. But if you're trying to do 100 at a time and then figure out trends in that data, you can run formulas, in Airtable, you could Excel and do math, which basically could give you, percent increase, over a set period of time, things like that. So I think it's really powerful to get it into a place like Airtable or Notion or, even Google Sheets, where you can run, sort of an app business intelligence analysis on all this data. So super cool. I think that tapping into APIs to enrich your data is a really good hack. And if you're not super comfortable with APIs, I think that Zapier is a pretty straightforward way to, work with APIs, because it sends back the object data in a way that's sort of parsed already so that you can just sort of map the fields pretty easily without having to have a super robust understanding of how APIs work. So
makes sense.
Super cool.
And if you have any data in Google Sheet, you can even use Central or other AI tools to do data analysis just using AI. You don't have to know how to write Excel formulas or do data cleaning. Let AI do the work for you.
Very true. Once again, you can integrate AI into, either into the workflow or into a lot of these tools natively. Airtable, I think, just released a bunch of AI features. You could definitely do it in Google Sheets, Notion, that kind of thing. So the possibilities are really, endless. And honestly, it probably makes more sense to do it in Airtable or Notion, because you're not going to be using Zapier's resources to run these automations. And it'll be more cost effective essentially if you do do it directly in the tool itself.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. A couple other ones here, just switching over. So we send a newsletter, out once a week. And one of the things that we do is try to keep our readers engaged, between the newsletters and also sort of upsell them on our other products, whether it just be our YouTube channel or, something that we're selling or trying to join our community. So these are a few things that we have set up. This is a ESP. This is basically an email sending provider, our email service provider. It's called Beehiiv. I highly recommend it, but we send our newsletter here with Beehiiv. And then what we can do is we can set up automations that trigger, depending on certain criteria for our subscribers. So all of these are set up. The ones that are running here are to promote different things. So this one is a community drip. And essentially what's happening is after they sign up for our newsletter, there's a certain amount of time that passes, and then they're going to get an email automatically that encourages to join our community. And we can click into that and see what it looks like here. It's very simple, but basically if a user signs up, it waits for 25 days. And then after 25 days, if they're still subscribed, it sends them an email that basically says you're invited to join our no code devs community. We wait 25 days because we want to build some trust with the newsletter. Once they read our newsletter, understand that hopefully our content's legitimate, then we invite them to the next step of our funnel, which is essentially joining our community. So something that I really like is using automations with emails because it's sort of like a superpower, especially for upselling products like community. We have the same sort of thing for YouTube where, basically somebody signs up, we wait 7 days, and then we send them a nice email telling them all about our YouTube channel where they can learn more and get tutorials and whatnot about different no-code tools. And then finally, this is just a digital product that we're selling. So after, I think it's like 175 days, we finally get around to trying to sell them something. Again, just building more trust through all of our emails. We finally send them this digital product that we're selling. So a few little automations here that we're running in Beehiiv.
I love this. Selling on autopilot. It's like building trust, providing value, but also like letting sales take care of itself automatically. Question here. So you're doing your email sequence after certain days. Is there a reason you're not going off, if there's people who have engaged with the previous emails or if they're like, higher open to it or whatnot? Is this a limitation of the automation there is? Or was it a conscious decision to only look at the certain days and just then follow up with that email drip campaign?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not a limitation of the platform. You can build all kinds of different segments within this tool. So you could, create a segment that's like, these users have an open rate of above 70%. So these are highly engaged users. I'm going to send it specifically to that segment. And we do that from time to time for special campaigns. But for these sort of like bigger general blanket campaigns, we just decided consciously to just have it all be time-based. But we will segment. You can go into, just to show, you can go to audience and segments, and you can create different segments, whether they're manual or static or dynamic, and, create these segments. Like we'll create a segment for the community, and it'll be, for users that are super engaged, or webinar guests, that kind of thing. So we create these segments all the time and then, mail to those segments. So you could definitely do that.
Nice. I love the email automation ones. Anything that helps. Email marketing works the best. And then if you can automate that and like get good results off of it, that's brilliant.
Yeah. And definitely using an email tool that allows you to segment and then automate is a must, because that's where you're going to really have the best success telling people about your own products or eventually selling them, some sort of digital product or your SaaS or whatever you're trying to sell.
Yeah. I've been working on trying to figure out how I can segment users into like different cohorts based on their interests, and then eventually be able to like personalize all emails. But that's a work in progress. It's a big project.
Yeah. Some of those projects are quite big. I think another thing you could do with automation with email specifically is sort of like purging inactive subscribers to increase your open rate and deliverability rates. That's something that I don't do often enough, but it's a good practice to do as well, which you could definitely do with Beehiiv and probably most email service provider tools. But I know you can do it in Beehiiv because I used Beehiiv for a few years now.
All right. What's the next one you have for us?
I've got one more to show you here. And this automation is built with a tool. I think it's relatively new, but super, super powerful. It's an AI LLM tool called AgentHub.dev. And this automation is actually powering a web app. Okay. So this sort of like Zapier could power a front end web app. This sort of LLM tool is powering a front end web app. What we've got going on here is a lot of things, but basically there's this input. This triggers a webhook, by the way, which is how we power a web app. But this input takes some data from a form on our website. Once that data is collected, what's happening here is it sends the input to Reddit and it scrapes Reddit for that specific subreddit. So this is very specific, but I'm just showing you how you can use AI to build these types of automation. So basically what's happening here is we ask the user for a subreddit value. The user gives us a subreddit value. It goes out to that subreddit and it scrapes that subreddit for 20 posts sorted by the top for that week. We can change these parameters, but that's what we decided on. And then what's happening here is it's truncating it a little bit just to save resources with AI. It's combining the inputs together, the URL, the text from the Reddit, and it's joining them all. And then what's actually happening is it's joining all of these into one massive big prompt. This is actually a prompt, and the prompt is taking inputs from everything that is collected here and is putting it all into this prompt. And then it's actually using Claude 3 Haiku. I'm using this because it's super fast. Yeah. I can get results a lot faster with Claude 3 over GPT-4, but it's basically taking this prompt. It's asking AI and then it's spitting everything out. This all happens in about 15 seconds. It's spitting everything back out here to an output, which is actually just a webhook. So I start the automation through a webhook and then I get a webhook result, and the end result is a web app that allows a user to scrape Reddit, but it's all being powered here basically by this LLM automation. This is a little bit more complex, but super cool what you can do.
That's brilliant. And if I remember correctly, you do not have a technical background. You're a marketing person.
Definitely do not have a technical background. I know a little bit about APIs and some light JavaScript, but HTML, CMS, that's as far as it goes. I definitely could not build or code a website from scratch.
Oh, like you're building a web app that's actually not being used by a few hundred people, all off of this single canvas with just like connecting different pillars together to talk about data, talk to data, get some prompts, and then get more results.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Yep.
How long did it take you to build this one?
That's a tricky question because there's a front end component of all of this that has to actually, do an API call and fetch all of it, then sort of parse through the data and present it to the front end user. This right here, they have a bunch of different templates that are pre-built: sales CRM, web scraping, media news. So they have this subreddit AI analysis template that's sort of pre-built, which gets you 25% of the way there. The prompt that I ended up writing was way more complex and I had to change a bunch of the workflows, but they have, all these sort of pre-built templates like YouTube Summarizer, Anonymous Twitter Bot, et cetera, et cetera. So you can work off that pretty quickly. So I would say this part of the automation, this was probably 5 to 6 hours total. And it was mostly just testing and tweaking this massive prompt over here.
Right.
That was most of the work. Doing all this was pretty intuitive and straightforward. And then building the front end of the website was probably 40 hours to, build the sort of web app component of it. But yeah, this year, a few hours, honestly. And once you get proficient with how all these modules map together, I think you could even be faster and crank something out like this out in an hour or two.
Before the AI and automation age, this would have probably been at least a 6-month project with senior developers and all that stuff. Incredible speed we're moving at.
Yeah, it's wild.
Also, I see a lot of business ideas here, based off of template. You look at the template and you pick an industry and you can build something similar for that as well. You did this Reddit scraper. We can do that for let's say healthcare or fintech, or just pick a very niche industry. It could be even people who are into Notion stuff. Niche the industry, the better the product is going to be because nobody else is talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's how sort of this started. Was the founder of this company, AgentHub here, was built this out for VCs that were tracking VCs who had funded SaaS apps, and then we're tracking the subreddit for trends. I'm a VC. I want to know how my money is performing. There's a subreddit about this SaaS app. I don't want to read all the, the comments on the Reddit and figure out what's going on. I just want it to be summarized to me and delivered to me via email. That's why this was built. And I just sort of changed it and converted it into a web app and made it available to anybody for any subreddit. But yes, this started out as a very niche thing for one specific subreddit, and it sent the user the information via email instead of back into the web app. But yeah, you could definitely niche down and do this. There's a ton of business ideas and use cases that you can niche down in for this as well.
Amazing. How much time in a week do you spend just building these automation AI workflows for your work?
Yeah, not a lot. I mean, honestly, usually I'm not really building these things too often. I've been in a little bit of a sprint lately, but for the most part, it takes, every 3 to 3 months, maybe I'll look at different workflows and see what I'm doing a lot of the time. And I'll be okay, there's probably an automation that we could do for this. And then I'll just build it and then sort of set it and forget it. So the actual building automations, like, probably happens like in chunks, but not a ton of time building automations for the most part.
And it saves you a lot of time.
And it saves you a lot of time, and it's a win-win. Exactly.
What about maintenance side of things? Do you ever have to like go back and change things? Do things break often? Do you encounter that kind of problems?
Yeah, I think that's a big problem that, probably people don't talk about. Maybe they don't want to admit it. When they break, sometimes you don't know it. And, but that's a problem because a lot of times, like, what's supposed to be happening isn't happening and you're not even aware because the error sort of like reporting for some of these apps is not the strong suit of the app. But I think it's good practice to go into whatever app you're using and sort of check the error logs and make sure that everything's working smoothly, from time to time, whether it's on like a, depending on how mission critical your automation is, you might want to check it more often or less often, or even set up some other sort of like redundant automation system to make sure that system is running. That wouldn't be a bad idea if you were really worried about it, failing and it would affect your bottom line. So they do break, but things generally are pretty, stable, I think, especially in 2024, things have come a long way. But, if you're making an API call and the endpoint for the API changes, it's going to break your automation. So you really got to watch that kind of stuff. And fortunately, there's some sort of like companies that are coming out that help with error reporting on automation tools like this that are pretty interesting. So that should help as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I do like Zapier has those reports as well. Like, just have those emails. Maybe you have, automation to actually flag those emails. So when something does break, you can get those notifications. That's what we use. But it's incredible talking to you. Like, you're the no-code dev. You're the founder, CEO of no-code dev. You build everything no-code dev, marketing person, building tech startups. Super cool. Before we close off the chat, I just want to ask you any cool AI tools or applications that you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I'm really excited about AgentHub right now. It's really fresh for me. It feels like you're building just internal applications, but you can access the endpoints via webhook. So you can build this entire automation and then just access all the data via webhook. So it's super cool, super powerful. They have a bunch of pre-built automations and it's all AI forward. So basically everything is, integrated with AI somehow. So I think they're YC24. So they're brand new, but super cool. Also BuildShip. I really like BuildShip. It's a little bit more technical. It's more like low code, but there's a lot of really cool things that we're seeing with BuildShip, especially in the no code space. So I'm really excited about that. Since I'm like the no code guy in terms of no code tools, Glide tables, man, the AI capabilities within Glide tables is actually pretty awesome. I think it's underrated. If you're building some sort of like internal tool or database, which is really what Glide is good for, and you want to enrich that data with AI, it's a superpower. There's a ton of capabilities in Glide tables. So I don't think a lot of people talk about that, or at least they don't enough. So definitely check out Glide tables for AI.
Thanks for sharing. My team and I were going to like this 3-day AI hackathon later this month. So it's good to know like a couple new tools that I actually didn't know about before, and we're going to leverage those, and hopefully we'll be able to build a product in a couple of days and get some customers for it.
Yeah. The other one I saw recently was Wondercraft, which is an AI podcasting tool. Super cool. You can like give it a bunch of links programmatically via Zapier. Like let's say you were like tracking like 4 different blogs. You can give it all those links and it'll actually, read all those articles and then create a podcast with your voice based on the content in those articles. And to prove their concept, they actually built a like top 5 podcast on Hacker News, all with AI. It just read Hacker News for the top articles and they created a podcast, like a daily Hacker News recap. And it like rose to the top of the charts. Wondercraft.ai, super cool tool if you're into the podcasting world. They have other things you can do besides podcasting, but I think that's sort of the bread and butter. I would also check that one out.
I'm super excited about that one, but at the same time, like, does really put plagiarism right there front and center, because anyone can just take anybody's content and just put in their own voice.
Yeah, it's definitely a major problem that I think is going to be a prevailing problem for the next few years. And it's going to take a lot of work to figure out what the sweet spot is for, plagiarism. So yeah, I share your concern there. I think it's a problem. We'll see what happens.
I heard even OpenAI is going to just announce the voice model where you can just train your voice for 15 seconds of data. That's insane.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be a lot of nefarious use cases there as well. So, we got to be careful. I think we've got to make sure that it doesn't get out of control.
Yeah. Well, thanks for getting on the call.
A big shout out to Arthur for taking the time and share those automations with us. And if you're inspired and you want to build your own startup, your own web app, or an online business, you can also follow their YouTube channel, No Code Devs, and their newsletter to learn more about how to build apps without any coding. One thing is clear, building is easier than ever. So if you have an idea, what's stopping you? If one of those workflows inspired you or gave you ideas, give a thumbs up and leave a comment if there's someone you want me to interview so we can go behind the scenes and see what automation in your workflow they use. See you next time.